Emma sat across from Sophie in the cozy little corner booth of their favorite cafe, a place they'd visited countless times together. As she absent-mindedly stirred her coffee, she wore a faint smile, the kind that lingered after one of Sophie's funny stories. But there was something distant in her eyes. Sophie noticed right away and leaned in, sensing that her friend had something on her mind. "All right, spill it. What's going on with you and Ryan?" she asked, giving Emma a knowing look. With a sigh, Emma set her spoon down, hesitating for a moment. "Oh, everything's fine," she said, her voice unconvincing. "He's a good husband. I mean, we've been together, almost 7 years now." She paused, tracing invisible patterns along the edge of her mug. "But sometimes it just feels like there should be more, like something's missing." Sophie echoed, raising an eyebrow. More? She'd heard this kind of thing before. Like excitement? Passion? Emma's eyes met Sophie's, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, exactly. It's like we're just comfortable. And while Ryan's perfectly happy with that, I feel like I need something more exciting, something that makes me feel alive again." Sophie's eyes lit up with interest, and she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. She began, "I've been exploring something new myself. Ever thought about opening things up a bit? Giving yourself a little room to see other people?" Emma's eyes widened, caught off guard. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Absolutely," Sophie replied with a nod. "My husband and I talked about it, and honestly, it's helped us feel closer. It doesn't have to mean anything deep, just some space to feel free. It might even bring you and Ryan closer in the long run." Emma took a moment, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. "But how would I even bring that up to him?" she asked, her voice a soft whisper. "Just be honest," Sophie said, her tone gentle. "It's not about him. It's about you and what you're feeling. Who knows? He might be open to it. A little change could be just what you two need." Emma took a deep breath, looking out the window. She had no idea that this one conversation, this little spark, was about to turn her life and her marriage upside down. She leaned in closer, her voice barely audible above the hum of the cafe. "So, how do you even start a conversation like this?" she asked, feeling both curious and uncertain. Sophie gave her a steady look. "Honestly, just be direct. Men appreciate it more than we think. If you try to dance around it, he'll just end up confused or suspicious." Emma's brow creased with worry. "But what if he thinks I don't love him anymore?" Sophie shook her head. "No, it's not about rejecting him. It's about being real with him. You could tell him how much you love him, while also explaining that you need a little freedom, something to make you feel alive again. Frame it right, and he'll see that this is about your personal growth, not about him being lacking." Emma took a slow breath, nodding. "All right, so I tell him that I want to feel more freely, more alive, and maybe he'll get that it's not just about us." She bit her lip, glancing away. "But Ryan's never really been open to unconventional ideas. He's all about stability." Sophie reached across the table, patting her hand. "If he loves you, he'll listen. And if he's willing to hear you out, that's her answer right there. It means he's ready to work through things, even if it's a bit unusual." Emma tried to reassure herself, hoping that Ryan would be understanding. The next evening, Emma sat across from Ryan at their dining room table, heart pounding as she went over her words one more time. She took a deep breath, finally starting, "Ryan, there's something I've been thinking about." Her voice was steady but soft. Ryan looked up from his meal, giving her his full attention. "What's on your mind, Emma?" he asked gently. She took a moment to gather her courage. "I've been feeling restless. It's not because of us, really. It's something inside me. I feel like I need to experience more in life, you know?" Ryan's face was thoughtful, and he listened without interrupting. "I guess I've been wondering what it might be like if we gave each other a little freedom in our marriage, to explore things we haven't before." She watched him closely, hoping he'd understand. "It's not that I don't love you, Ryan. I just feel like we both might benefit from a little room to breathe." Ryan remained silent for a moment, his expression unreadable, then slowly nodded, his gaze calm. "So, you're saying you want us to open things up?" he asked, his voice steady. Emma nodded, her heart pounding. "Just for a bit, just to see what it's like. I think it could be good for us." Ryan looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "I see," he replied, his voice soft but firm. "If that's what you feel you need, Emma, I won't stand in your way." A wave of relief washed over her. But there was also a strange hint of unease. She'd expected him to argue, maybe even protest, but here he was calm and accepting. Ryan leaned back, folding his arms as he studied her. "So, this freedom," he said, his voice carrying a faint edge Emma couldn't quite read. "I'm assuming this goes both ways?" Emma felt a pang of worry. She hadn't really considered Ryan's side of it, assuming he'd be content to let her explore. But now, as she looked at him, the reality hit her. "Well, yes, I suppose, if that's something you want to." Ryan nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "Thank you, Emma. I think I understand what you're asking." He exhaled deeply, then met her eyes. "I'm okay with it. I want you to be happy." Emma forced a smile, tried to shake the creeping sense of dread. She'd expected resistance, or at least some hesitation. Instead, she was met with Ryan's calm acceptance and a hint that he, too, intended to embrace this new freedom wholeheartedly. "Thank you, Ryan," she murmured, her voice soft. "That really means a lot." Ryan gave her a small smile, but something in his gaze made her stomach twist. She couldn't quite explain it, but it felt like she'd somehow lost control over her own plan. Ryan's calm reaction had left Emma feeling off balance, a quiet unease she couldn't quite shake. Just a few days later, she and Sophie stepped into the pulsing energy of a downtown nightclub, the kind of place neither of them had visited in years. The place was packed, people laughing, shouting over the music, moving together on the crowded dance floor under strobing lights. Emma could feel her nerves buzzing, mixed with an excitement she hadn't felt in ages. Sophie shot her a grin and gave her a playful nudge. "Well, you finally made it. How does it feel?" she asked, her voice raised over the beat of the music. Emma managed a laugh, though there was a tremor in her voice. "Honestly, I'm still trying to process it. I told Ryan, and he agreed. No arguments, no anger. Just so calm." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "Wow, sounds like he's pretty open-minded. See? I told you he'd get it if you just explained." Emma nodded, trying to feel reassured. "Yeah, he did understand. It's just he was so calm about it, you know? I must have took at him." Sophie chuckled, a knowing gleam in her eye. "That's probably because he's looking forward to it too. Guys love acting laid back, but he's probably already thinking of his own possibilities. Trust me, this'll be good for both of you." Emma forced herself to relax, smiling as she took a deep breath. "So, what about you?" she asked, deflecting. "Does your husband know you're out here with me tonight?" A flicker of hesitation crossed Sophie's face before she shrugged it off. "Oh, he's off on a hiking trip with his buddies. We have an understanding. No questions, just trust." Emma raised her eyebrows, feeling a spark of curiosity. "So, he doesn't ask where you're going or who you're with?" Sophie laughed and waved it off, grabbing Emma's hand as they made their way toward the bar. "Come on, Emma. Honesty is one thing, but he doesn't need to know every tiny detail. This is about freedom, remember?" Emma hesitated, feeling a small pang of doubt. She'd thought openness was part of the deal, but Sophie's confidence was contagious, and before she could dwell on it, Sophie ordered them both cocktails, raising her glass with a grin. "To freedom and new adventures." Emma clinked her glass against Sophie's, taking a long sip. The drinks were strong and sweet, and soon, the edge of her nerves began to soften, replaced by a light, carefree feeling. They laughed and made their way to the dance floor, letting the music sweep them up. After a while, Emma felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Lucas, a familiar face from work. She'd known him for years, but only as a colleague. Here, under the club's flashing lights, with a mischievous smile on his face, he looked different, more charming, even a little dangerous. "Emma, didn't expect to see you here," he said, grinning. She returned his smile, feeling a thrill she hadn't experienced in years. "I could say the same for you." Lucas introduced his friend to Sophie, and soon, the four of them were chatting and laughing together, each drink and each song making the night feel more alive, more thrilling. As the night wore on, they ordered another round, and Emma found herself letting go completely, feeling a freedom that was entirely new. Gradually, they drifted off into pairs, each couple finding their own space amidst the crowd. Emma and Lucas ended up in a quieter corner, their conversations softening, becoming more personal. Lucas leaned in, his gaze steady. "This feels different," he said, his voice warm. "I've never seen you like this." Emma felt a spark in her chest, a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I guess I feel different tonight," she replied, meeting his eyes. In that moment, the choice seemed easy, almost natural. They left the club together, laughter spilling between them as they walked through the cool night air until they reached a small, quiet motel at the edge of town. Neither of them hesitated as they entered. For Emma, the night felt unlike any other she'd had in years, a taste of the thrill and freedom she'd craved, finally within her reach. But when morning came and sunlight filtered through the window, the excitement began to dissolve, leaving a strange mix of satisfaction and lingering unease. She dressed quietly, glancing over at Lucas as he slept. She found the adventure she'd been seeking, but as she left the motel, her thoughts returned to Ryan and the calm, unreadable look in his eyes. That morning, Emma slipped quietly through her front door, careful to make as little noise as possible. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. Normally, Ryan would be up by now, maybe having his morning coffee before getting ready for work. A nervous feeling crept over her as she looked around. She checked the bedroom, the kitchen, even the backyard, but Ryan was nowhere to be found. Feeling uneasy, she pulled out her phone and called him. After a few rings, he answered, his voice calm but businesslike. "Hey, Emma. What's up?" Relief washed over her, just hearing his voice. "Ryan, where are you?" she asked. "I didn't see you this morning." "At the office," he replied. "There's a new project, and it's going to take a lot of hours. I might even be tied up this weekend." Emma felt a pang of guilt mixed with relief as her shoulders relaxed. "All right. I was just wondering. I didn't see you, so." Ryan's voice remained steady. "Everything's fine, Emma. Just busy. I'll be home by dinner." She exhaled, her heart settling. "Okay. Well, take it easy," she murmured before hanging up. That evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and cast a soft glow through the living room windows, Emma heard Ryan's footsteps at the door. She greeted him with a smile as he came in, setting his briefcase by the entryway. "Long day?" she asked, mirroring his tired smile. He nodded. "You could say that." He made his way into the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water. Emma watched him closely, searching his face for any hint of how he felt, eager to understand just what was going on beneath his calm exterior. Emma decided to ease into the topic, hoping to get a better read on Ryan's feelings. "So," she began, keeping her tone casual, "how are you feeling about, everything?" Ryan looked at her over his glass, one eyebrow raised. "Everything," he repeated, his voice calm. She offered a sheepish smile. "This open marriage thing. Has it meant anything for you? Are you getting something out of it?" Ryan set his glass down thoughtfully. "Honestly, Emma, I haven't had a moment to even think about it," he replied evenly. "This project's been taking up all my time. Maybe when things settle down, I'll have more space to consider that side of things." Emma felt a twinge of disappointment, but tried to hide it behind a forced smile. "Yeah, I get that." Ryan shrugged, then shifted the focus. "But enough about me," he said, his gaze steady and direct. "What about you? Didn't you and Sophie have a night out recently?" Emma's pulse quickened. She considered telling him about what had happened with Lucas, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she kept it bayed. "Yeah, just some drinks, a little dancing, ended up crashing at Sophie's place," she replied, aiming for a casual tone. Ryan's face remained unreadable. "And how do you feel about it all? Is this really what you wanted?" Emma hesitated, but her answer came out before she could stop it. "Actually, yeah, Ryan, I feel good. It's like I have this energy, this spark that I haven't felt in a long time." Something flickered in Ryan's eyes, but his expression stayed calm, and he nodded slowly. "Well, I'm happy for you, Emma," he said softly. She returned his smile, relief mingling with excitement, though a small voice in the back of her mind questioned his calm acceptance. She'd expected a reaction, maybe even some resistance. Instead, his quiet approval left her feeling satisfied and strangely unsettled. Over the next week, Emma found herself texting both Lucas and Sophie constantly. Lucas was charming and flirty, openly enthusiastic about their night together, and quick to drop hints about a grown-up party he was planning for the weekend, something he promised would be unforgettable. He insisted that she bring Sophie along, and Emma, intrigued, decided to reach out to her friend to get some clarity. She dialed Sophie's number. Excitement and nerves tangled together as she waited for her to pick up. Sophie answered on the first ring. "Hey, Emma, all set for tomorrow?" Emma laughed, though a bit hesitantly. "Almost. I actually wanted to ask you about it. Lucas has been going on about this party, and it sounds different." "Oh, it'll definitely be different," Sophie chuckled. "Lucas knows how to throw a party." Emma hesitated, then added, "But what about Ryan? He's been so distant lately, buried in work. I honestly can't tell if he's okay with this. We're just too distracted to care." Sophie laughed. "Oh, Emma, come on. He's probably just using work as an excuse to avoid admitting he's doing his own thing. Men hate acknowledging that they've got their own plans." Emma felt a pang of jealousy at the idea, but tried to push it aside. "Maybe you're right. I just wish he'd react. Anything to show he's actually okay with this." Sophie's tone turned reassuring. "Look, you need to relax. Forget about Ryan and his work for one night, and just enjoy yourself. Trust me, Lucas's party is going to be the escape you need." Emma's curiosity grew. "All right, I'll try. But Sophie, when you say fun, what exactly do you mean?" Sophie's voice took on a mischievous edge. "Let's just say you might learn a few new terms, like Milk Brothers or Captain's Wheel." Emma blinked, feeling both intrigued and slightly embarrassed. "Captain's Wheel? What's that?" Sophie laughed. "Oh, you'll see. Let's just say it involves a few extra people. Get ready for an unforgettable night." Emma's excitement grew as she hung up, her nerves melting away. This was exactly the kind of thrill she'd been craving. When Saturday night arrived, Emma told Ryan she'd be out with Sophie, framing it as a typical girls' night. Ryan looked up from his work and gave her a distracted smile. "Have fun, Emma. Don't worry about me. I'll be here with this project all night." A sense of relief and satisfaction washed over her. "All right, just don't work too hard, okay?" Ryan nodded, barely looking up as she left, and a thrill bubbled up inside her. Finally, she was stepping into something new, and Ryan's calm acceptance felt like permission. Later that evening, Emma and Sophie pulled up to Lucas's house, a beautiful place with lights glowing warmly from the backyard where a pool sparkled under the night sky. Music floated through the air, and as they approached, Emma realized the party was larger, and maybe wilder, than she'd anticipated. There were a dozen people milling around, a mix of men and women she didn't recognize. Lucas spotted her and broke into a grin. "Emma, glad you made it," he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. He hugged Sophie and guided them through the house toward the pool. "By the way," he chuckled, "the pool's fair game tonight. Did you bring a swimsuit?" Emma's eyes widened. "No, I didn't realize there'd be a pool." Lucas laughed, shrugging. "Well, underwear works fine, where you can go without. No judgments here." He winked, and Emma felt her cheeks flush. Sophie's infectious enthusiasm took over as she kicked off her shoes, shooting Emma a reassuring smile. "Come on, it's going to be fun," Sophie said, before diving into the pool with a gleeful splash. Lucas handed Emma a drink, and she let herself unwind a little, trying to embrace the party's easygoing, playful vibe. It felt like a college party, with people laughing, teasing each other, and shedding any reservations they'd brought with them. The music thumped from the speakers, and the lights cast a warm glow over everything, creating a carefree atmosphere where drinks kept flowing, and everyone seemed to leave their worries behind. As the evening wore on, Emma's mix of excitement and nerves grew stronger. Laughter turned into flirtation, and soon a few light-hearted games began, starting with funny dares that quickly escalated into more daring challenges. Couples switched dance partners, and the boundaries Emma thought would hold began to dissolve. She found herself swept up in the energy, and Sophie was clearly thrilled, leaning into the party's escalating vibe with abandon. At one point, Lucas leaned in, his voice low as he wrapped an arm around her waist. "What do you think, Emma? Ready for a new experience?" His hand rested easily on her back, his eyes glinting with hints of things well beyond her comfort zone. Emma hesitated, pulse racing with both curiosity and caution. The energy around her was magnetic, tempting her to explore the unknown. "I think so," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with a blend of nerves and curiosity. The group naturally began to split into pairs and trios, and Emma found herself in a circle of unfamiliar faces, some laughing, others making flirtatious remarks that hinted at where the night was headed. She glanced at Sophie, who met her gaze and raised her glass in a silent toast, as if to say, "Here we go." But as the night turned more private, a wave of unease washed over Emma. The idea of exploring new things had seemed thrilling in theory. But in reality, as hands reached out and voices turned suggestive, her pulse quickened, not with excitement, but with discomfort. Taking a steadying breath, she gently backed away. "Actually, I don't think I'm ready for this." "Not yet," she said, her voice soft but resolute. A ripple of disappointment went through the group, but most seemed understanding. Lucas gave her a sympathetic nod. "That's all right, Emma," he said warmly. "Sometimes it just takes a little time to get comfortable." Sophie, however, wasn't ready to give up. "Come on, Emma. You were having fun. Just relax. You'll love it if you give it a chance." But Emma shook her head, her unease now evident. "I really can't, Sophie. I just need a little more time." Lucas rested a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "It's fine," he said gently. "Let's let Emma take things at her own pace. Besides," he added with a sly grin, "there are plenty of people here ready to keep you entertained." Sophie shrugged, quickly refocusing her attention back on the party as she was pulled back into the circle. The night carried on, even wilder than before. Emma watched from the doorway as Sophie and the others embraced the night's full, uninhibited energy. Feeling out of place, Emma drifted into a quiet room, pouring herself a glass of wine and sinking into a chair. She sipped slowly, letting the muffled sounds of the party fade into the background. Her thoughts wandered to Ryan and the calm, steady way he'd supported her plans with Sophie, his face unreadable when she'd mentioned the night out. For the first time, she found herself questioning if she truly understood his thoughts and intentions. Though a part of her wanted to leave, she stayed, sipping her drink as her mind turned over questions and doubts she hadn't fully anticipated. Hours later, as the party wound down, people emerged from the dimly lit rooms and gathered in the main area for snacks and one last round of drinks. Laughter and conversation filling the air again. Sophie, flushed and full of energy, spotted Emma sitting alone and came over, nudging her playfully. "Hey, you doing okay? You look like you needed a quiet moment," she chuckled, clearly still riding the night's excitement. Emma forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just not sure that scene's really for me." Sophie rolled her eyes with a laugh. "Oh, you just need to warm up, that's all. Next time, you'll feel right at home." But as dawn began to creep into the sky, Emma felt an odd sense of unease settle deeper in her chest. As people began saying their goodbyes, slipping out as casually as if they'd attended a regular get-together, Emma slipped out quietly, the thrill of the night now replaced by a strange sense of dread. She drove home in silence, her mind swirling with thoughts she couldn't shake. When she finally walked into her house, it was dark and quiet, and she sighed in relief, assuming Ryan was still asleep. She tiptoed through the living room and made her way upstairs to the bedroom. But when she opened the door, her heart dropped. The bed was perfectly made with no sign of Ryan. A quick look around made her stomach twist. Some of his clothes were missing from the closet, and the familiar comforter on his side of the bed was gone. Panic prickled through her, tightening in her chest. Then she noticed a stack of papers on the nightstand. Her heart froze as she read the bold letters at the top. Divorce. A wave of shock hit her, followed by an overwhelming sense of dread. Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers. This can't be happening. But as she stared at them, Ryan's calm demeanor over the past few weeks started to make a horrible kind of sense. He'd been quietly preparing, gathering everything he needed before slipping out of her life without a word. Desperate, she dialed his number, but her call went straight to voicemail. She tried again, heart pounding, but still, there was no answer. In the days that followed, Emma's calls to Ryan went unanswered, Her voicemails and texts left in the void, as if he'd vanished without a trace. She pleaded with him to talk, to give her some form of closure, but he remained unreachable. When she finally heard back, it was only through his lawyer, who kept responses cold and impersonal, each word leaving her feeling more isolated and confused. Then, the situation took a turn she hadn't anticipated. At work, she noticed colleagues avoiding her, their usual warmth replaced with a cold, judgmental silence. It wasn't long before she learned why. Ryan, in his quiet, methodical way, had gathered all the evidence he needed. Her text messages with Lucas, photos, even details about the party. And it had somehow trickled into the company's channels. Her employer, strict and conservative, wasn't about to tolerate any hint of scandal. Soon, she was called into her supervisor's office, their face a mask of disappointment, as they informed her that her conduct was under review. The job she had poured years into was now at risk, slipping further from her grasp with each day. When her court date finally arrived, Emma came face to face with the full extent of Ryan's preparations. Among the evidence he presented were private texts, photos, and records from a private investigator who had tracked her outings with Sophie, her flirtations with Lucas, even her attendance at that infamous party. Emma sat in the courtroom, numb with shock, feeling a mix of betrayal and shame. The realization that Ryan had known everything all along, that he'd been watching her with such precision, all playing the role of the calm, supportive husband, was a blow she hadn't seen coming. She was trapped, humiliated, and blindsided by the very choices she had once thought harmless. The divorce process was harsh. Every detail of her attempt at an open marriage was dissected and laid bare. Her texts with Lucas, her late nights with Sophie, everything was dragged into the light with nothing left to shield her from the fallout. Within days, Emma lost her job, and Lucas was soon dismissed as well, the scandal tainting both of their reputations in their tight-knit, conservative workplace. But the worst betrayal came from an unexpected place. Ryan had sent Sophie's husband, Jack, all the evidence of her double life. Emma learned, to her horror, that Sophie's open marriage had been a lie. Jack had no idea about her nights with other men. When Jack found out, he filed for divorce, and Sophie's social circles turned against her, friends becoming critics almost overnight. Furious and humiliated, Sophie cut Emma off completely, blaming her and Ryan for the devastation her own actions had brought. As the scandal spread, Emma's social life unraveled. Friends, neighbors, even family who once embraced her now kept their distance. Those she'd worked with took Ryan's side, his dignified portrayal of the betrayed husband, painting her choices in an even darker light. It seemed as though everyone she'd once counted on had turned their back on her. Finally, one evening, Emma managed to reach Ryan for a final conversation. She sat across from him, feeling the weight of all her mistakes bearing down on her. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at him, pleading. "Ryan, please. I made a mistake, a huge one. I thought this would be something beautiful, something that might bring us closer somehow. I only was with Lucas once, and at the party, I couldn't even go through with it. Please forgive me." Ryan sighed deeply, looking at her with a mixture of exhaustion and something else she couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe, or just relief that it was over. "Emma," he began, his tone steady but without any warmth. "When someone suggests an open marriage, it usually means they've already let certain ideas take root. And those ideas often mean the marriage has been fractured long before anyone realizes it. You weren't honest with me. You wanted to live halfway in that world, halfway out, keeping things hidden." Emma bowed her head, feeling the truth in his words. He continued, his voice calm but unyielding. "I wanted this to end cleanly. Maybe I went too far, maybe it seems cruel, but the fact that you felt the need to keep certain details from me told me everything I needed to know." He sighed again, his voice softening only slightly. "I don't think we can fix this, Emma. I just don't." Emma felt the world closing in, the weight of her choices crushing her. What she'd seen as a path to rediscovery had instead exposed cracks she hadn't been ready to confront. She left that night feeling hollow, her life reduced to the consequences of decisions that had once seemed harmless, even exciting. She had learned a bitter lesson, one she'd carry with her, and all she could hope was that someday she might find forgiveness, or perhaps just a measure of peace within herself. Only time, or perhaps some grace beyond her understanding, would reveal whether redemption was even possible. But for now, she was alone, with nothing but the echo of her mistakes as her only company. What is your attitude toward open marriage? Share your opinion in the comments.